does seem like there's race hate at the bottom of it. I can't think of a better explanation. I mean, there have been wars in Africa, sort of every week for my entire life, and no one's saying we've got too many Africans in Nigeria, let's replace them with Indians or something. No one would even think to say that. But poor Ireland, which didn't really do anything wrong on the world stage that I'm aware of, is, I mean, in 100 years, there'll be, a minority of Irish people in Ireland. That's a big change, and it's on purpose. How could anyone read that as anything but an expression of hate?
You're right. Contempt for their working class, for the working class of Ireland. This is why, Tucker, I think they're cracking down so hard. You've seen what they've tried to do to Viktor Orban, who's kind of become the leader of this, the political and public intellectual leader of this. They've tried to isolate him for years, although he's been right about the Ukraine war. He's been right about what happened in Germany in 2014, about the sovereignty of his country and the sovereignty of his people. But in Ireland, they've taken it to a next level. I mean, they immediately came out, and they're prosecuting right now, I should say, investigating Conor McGregor for hate speech, for some tweets he put out and a couple of statements he made. The Garda came out and they've arrested 30 people, and their whole focus is on the prosecution of the people that stood up to this and the people that, quite frankly, were angry about it. The entire focus has been going after the population and to try to cow them, to try to say, no, if you stand up to this, you stand up to the political class, if you have an opinion, right, which, you should have a free speech, but if you have an opinion, that's going to be hate speech. And that hate speech law has many years in prison associated with it. So they have cracked down not on immigration crime, not on the homelessness situation, the lawlessness, the breakdown of law and order. They have focused on the Irish people to really put their focus on. And look who's doing it. I mean, the head of the Irish government and the chief of police.
If a government makes it a crime to criticize that government's policies, then it's not by definition a free country, is it?
I think you're absolutely correct. And I think you're seeing that here in the United States. I mean, as you know, you're hounded all the time. If you have a different opinion from the state, right, they're trying to criminalize that. And they're doing that, trying to do that every day here in the United States. It's one of the reasons that if they can't criminalize it to actually use the courts and the police state like the FBI to come after you, they'll basically partner with big tech to either deplatform you or to other you. We're seeing this here in the United States. And this is just about the situation of the problem. Think about the solution. I keep telling people, hey, think downrange to 2025. If we're able to win and close in that win, think of the issues we have to deal with, not just in the budget, but with the deportations. I mean, we have 9 million or 8 or 9 million here today just on Biden's watch. Center for Immigration Studies says we're going to have another 6 million by the time we get to the election next year. That's 14 or 15 million. I think illegal alien invaders are coming because they've gamed the asylum system.
I mean, at some point, again, you just worry about unrest because they've kind of kept the lid on this by, threatening to arrest people, I suppose, but mostly by calling them white supremacists or anti-Semites or whatever. At a certain point, people say, well, I'm actually not those things at all. And you're not going to intimidate me anymore. And you're wrecking my country and you're attacking me for being white. And why would I put up with that? And they're going to get radical. Like, why would that not happen?
I think that also, it's also a class thing. This is why I think you see many Hispanic men and many African-American men now coming to the MAGA movement or the America First movement. One of the things that hasn't worked, they have demonized Trump and demonized this movement, is that we're trying to take democracy away. You're a fascist. I'm a fascist. We're the leaders of a new fascist program.
Trying to take democracy away by listening to what the population wants. I love that. Sorry, excuse me.
When people look at it, they say, hey, I'm not a bad person. And I'm not asking for something that's terribly aggressive. I just want my community to be my community. I don't want to be flooded with illegal aliens that are taking jobs, causing crime, adding to homelessness. And quite frankly, we can't pay for them. We can't pay for their education. We can't pay for their health care. We can't pay for their housing. We can't pay for the stipend and the phones. We can't do it. And people look and say, hey, they're calling me a fascist every day. They're calling Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump and Steve Bannon and many, many others leaders of a fascist movement. Well, I don't feel like a fascist. I feel like it's common sense. I think that's the power of your speech the other day. You said, hey, just look around. Just trust your gut. Just look around and see. Something feels very wrong, feels very different in America. And if you even go back a few years ago to the debates we used to have in Obama's first term, they almost seemed kind of naive. They seem very, Obamacare, and the scale of the problem's gone up. The complexity of the problem's gone up, and the viciousness of, I think, it's like the Bourbon aristocrats in pre-revolutionary France. They said, they didn't know anything and they didn't learn anything, right? That's the kind of uniparty public intellectual and the elites we have. They're dug in. And I don't think it's working. I think you're seeing that in the polling numbers. I also think you're seeing it in just culture. There's a change of people coming to our side, say, yes, we should put America first. And it's importantly, we should put American citizens first. And I think that's the big tectonic plate shift we're seeing. But man, it's going to be quite a fight for the next, 5 or 10 years. It's going to take that long to work through this.
Last question. You've mentioned Conor McGregor a couple of times. So he's, of course, the MMA fighter. He's been very vocal on social media about what's happening in Ireland, and he seems to be alluding to his getting into politics, taking over Ireland. How would you assess that? What do you think of him and what he's saying?
I think I put it up on social media. I think he's an Irish patriot. Look, he's got some rough edges. I'm Irish, right? He's got some rough edges, but I think people in times of turmoil look to people who are fighters. I think it was Churchill that said courage is the most important of all the virtues, because it's on virtue that it's on courage that all the other virtues rest. I think you're seeing, he didn't have to do this. By being so vocal, he put himself out there as a target, just like you. Once you're out there, if you step forward and say, hey, this is not right, this is what we have to do, we have to think about the country, and we have to think about the country's citizens first, all of a sudden you're a target. He could have a great life. He's launching pubs. He's an internationally known guy. It's like Trump. You could go do other things. You don't need this. He's doing this, I think, for his great love of Ireland and the Irish people. And like I said, he's got some rough edges. But remember, in what I call a fourth turning in turbulent times, you're going to have the Donald Trumps of the world step forward. You're going to have the Conor McGregors. Those are the people that are going to come through in times of turmoil. These are not era where people that have worked in the state legislature and just punched all their tickets are really, I think, what people are looking for. They're looking for people that are courageous, and we'll have to see Conor McGregor. Look, they're going to come after Conor McGregor. I mean, hard. They're going to do the hate speech thing. I think they're also going to limit the ability of people to go in Ireland like they've tried to do in England, because I think the political class there is petrified about some new party coming up that's more populist nationalist. We've seen it you've seen it all over the world. You've gone and interviewed people from Spain to Brazil to Argentina. It's interesting that the biggest lid they put on this is in Great Britain and in Ireland. Remember, the Tories are worse. The Tories are 10 times worse than establishment Republicans. You still don't have, even with Nigel, you still don't have a populist nationalist party that's really risen as an alternative. And in Ireland, they will do that. Corrupt political class will do anything Brussels wants, anything Davos wants, to make sure that there's no chance for that party to come up. And the first thing they'll do, they'll attack national figures like Conor McGregor that say, hey, we got to really start putting the Irish people first.
Younger people say the news is full of lies.
In Kennedy's motorcade,
239 people. The death of Jeffrey Epstein.